Hello, people from around the universe! I am your host, the Italian Ace, and with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet being ever so closer, even though they're still, a good 6 months away, realistically, I thought it would be pretty fun to go over what, in my opinion, are the top 5 games on the Switch as of right now. Now, this is a bit different than the usual Pokemon content, even though there will be at least one Pokemon game on this list, but I'm not going to tell you which spot and I'm not going to tell you which game, so if you want to find out, you're going to have to stay tuned. Still, I think this is kind of an interesting topic as Pokemon fans because I'm guessing a lot of us have a Switch, and so, if there's maybe a game that I've played that I really enjoyed and you haven't, and maybe this video will get you the incentive to check it out. And all of the games on this list I think are more than worthy of being played at least once. So at least look forward to that part of the video because I do think you could get some really good recommendations from this list. Regardless, I hope you're excited. Let's jump into the actual top 5 now. But of course, before we get into any of that, cue my intro. Okay, so coming in at number 5, and this was by far the most contested spot on this list, we have Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I mean, this game, realistically, might very well be the best multiplayer game on the Switch right now. And even if you disagree with that, I think we can all agree that it is, at the very least, a top 2 Smash Bros. Game of all time, if not just outright the number 1 spot, with probably only Melee really competing with it. I mean, this game is just so fun. Whether you're playing it with people who have no idea what they're doing, and it's just all the chaos of a free-for-all with maybe up to 8 players playing at the same time, and items and random stages, or you're playing it 1v1 where it's more serious and maybe it's 2 people who are not complete garbage at the game, which is kind of where I place myself in terms of skill level, where I'm not good but I'm not complete garbage. This game kind of has it all. Like, you can just pop this in the Switch, ask someone to play with you, and you're gonna have a good time, let's just be honest. Still, because it doesn't really have too much single player content, I mean, yes, World of Light can take a fair amount of time to get through, but that's kind of it. I can't really place it higher up on the list, but if we're just going off of how fun it is to play, it probably would crack top 3, although I'm not super sure because every game in front of it is just really good, so I don't really know, but regardless, this is a great game, and if you somehow have not played this or any of the Smash games, then do yourself a favor, try it out, and even though there will be some growing pains with learning how this actually works, especially at the beginning with some SDs off the stage, it will be worth it in the end. Just take my word for it. Now, coming in at number 4, and this is the only game on the list that is not a Nintendo-specific game that is very much made for the Switch first and foremost, we have Hades. This is, by far, in my opinion at least, the best roguelike dungeon crawler game ever made. I mean, you can play this game for hours and hours and hours and never get tired. I have done so many run-throughs of the underworld with different setups and different weapons and different difficulties and different added challenges and anything you can think of. It is a blast. Like, you will not get bored ever playing this game. At least I don't think so. And even just the initial challenge of seeing how many runs it takes for you to escape the underworld the first time is so fun that when you finish it, the first thing you're going to want to do is come back for more. And if that's not the mark of a great game, then I don't know what is. Also, by the way, it took me 21 tries to escape the first time. I think that's pretty decent, all things considered, especially since I hadn't really played through many dungeon crawlers before, so I'm going to take that as a win. And if you escaped in less attempts, good for you. I did this completely blind though, so I didn't look up the optimal setup. That was just pure skill on my end. And if you also did this completely blind and still escaped in under 20 attempts, bravo. Anyway, that was just me maybe bragging, maybe not. Honestly, from what I saw from people online, it seems 20 attempts was better than average, but not like crazy good, so I don't know. Anyway, the point is, this game is fantastic, and if you haven't played it, then just give it a shot, because I think after you do the first run, you're gonna be hooked, at least in my opinion. And this is also without mentioning that the actual underlying story with all of the characters is really fun to follow along. And there's so many interesting interactions with the Greek gods and different characters from Greek mythology and how they interact with each other as well, that if you're someone like me who's interested in mythology at all, you're gonna love this. Like, I can basically guarantee it. But alright, enough gushing about Hades. It's just that, man, I remember when I first started playing it, I think for 2 months straight, that's all I played, so I had to sing its praises for a little bit. Still, it's time to move on to the number 3 spot, and this is probably not gonna come to a shock to any one of you, but I mean, it is a really good game, and so it deserves its number 3 spot on this list, and that is Pokemon Legends Arceus. I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? We all agree this game is fantastic. They took the Pokemon formula, turned it on its head, had it somehow be even better, in my opinion, than basically any Pokemon game before it, except 2 that are kind of tied with it. It's just, how can you not love it, right? It's just so good. Seriously. You start this game up, and the story is, I mean, really trippy, but also really interesting. And the actual gameplay mechanic is just, it's so polished, so well executed, so fun, so incredibly enthralling. Like, I mean, honestly, it hasn't been since I played through Black 2 and White 2 for the first time that I had this much fun with a Pokemon game. And that is some high praises. Trust me. And if you're wondering, yes, Black 2 and White 2 is one of the 2 games that are above/tied Legends Arceus as of right now, in my opinion. With the other one being Emerald, because, I mean, those 2 games are just the epitome of the perfect classic Pokemon formula, at least to me. But yes, Legends Arceus is just, it's so good. They introduced so many cool concepts, like noble Pokemon were so interesting to see. Everything with Arceus was fantastic. Vola was a very cool character. Professor Lavender was maybe one of my top 3 favorite professors in all of Pokemon. And it's just like, you have all of this on top of a game where you can just go around catching Pokemon to your heart's content. I mean, it's just a dream come true, honestly. And I cannot wait for them to do more with this type of game, because I really don't think they're going to stop with the kind of success that it had. Or at least I hope they won't, because this game deserves some kind of a sequel. Maybe, what's the mythical Pokemon that I really like? Ooh, Legends Marshadow. Yeah, that's a bit out of left field, but just hear me out. You can go into like the shadows somehow. I don't care how they figure it out, but just some way for you to maybe merge with the shadows, and then like that's where you find hints as to where Marshadow is, and he kind of is leading you on this weird journey where you will face off against him in the end, and then you still can just catch Pokemon both in the normal world and in this shadow world. Not the Shadow Realm from Yu-Gi-Oh!, although that would also be interesting to have in a Pokemon game, but just something really out there on the same level as Legends Arceus, where you're like traveling back in time, and there's just all of this crazy stuff happening with interdimensional portals, and it's just fantastic, honestly, to have in a Pokemon game. But alright, no need to really delve much deeper into Legends Arceus. I mean, I'm sure most of you have played through the game already, and if you haven't, you probably were already planning on doing so regardless of this video. So I think it's time we move on to the number 2 entry. And this also probably won't be a shocker to anyone, but again, it does deserve all of its high praise, and that is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This game, I mean, honestly, I think the best way to describe it is the absolute best open world experience that you can have in any game out there, period, bar none. And look, I know some of you will be like, oh, but there's this other game, which I know for a lot of people will be Skyrim, and that's totally fine. That is actually much better, and this is the reason why, and blah, 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 blah. But I just disagree. There's this sense of wonder and just joy when you're out there exploring the Breath of the Wild world that I think is kind of unmatched by any other open world game. And I do mean that. It is just fantastic to explore every nook and cranny in this world because there is always something there. There's always something to discover. And that's what you want from an open world game, right? That is the point of an open world game. Also, on top of that, it has a really interesting storyline, at least to me. And honestly, one of my favorite iterations of Link, both design-wise and I don't know if you can say personality-wise, because again, Link doesn't really talk, but from what you can gather from his expressions, also personality-wise. So that's a big plus. And the fact that you can just kind of go and take on Ganon whenever? Like, seriously, whenever? That's awesome. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it on your first playthrough to just go and take Ganondorf on frame 1, but if you wanted to, you could. Plus, this is one of the only games that I can think of where no matter what you imagine as something that might work, when you try it out and successfully pull it off, it will basically always work. Like you have a weapon, like a club or a sword or something that isn't really meant to be long range, but you want to throw it and hit an enemy with it, go ahead, you can do that. You're in a shrine and you don't want to solve the puzzle the way they're making you, and you're thinking of a different way of getting around it and still getting to the final part, you can do that too. I mean, not always, but for all the shrines, there are different solutions. Like, it's crazy. You can do so much stuff. You want to literally skateboard down on your shield? Yes, of course. Why wouldn't you be able to do that? Like, it's crazy. There's so many things that you can do, and they're all so well implemented that it's like, how? How did they even do it? It's honestly just insane to think about. Like, it must have been so hard to test this game and all of its features and make sure that they didn't break it or they didn't have just broken features themselves. Like, But I mean, I'm so glad they did. Like, this game is fantastic. And that might be an understatement. It is really, really close to just a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. Probably sitting in at like a 9.9 or something like that, because it is really that good. Like, truly, it is that incredibly good. But I hear you saying, if it is so amazing, why is it not number 1? We'll get there, don't worry. I mean, the number 1 spot is just has a special place in my heart, but just give me a second, we'll get there. But before that, we're gonna have some honorable mentions in quick-fire succession. Sword and Shield definitely are not in the top 5 Switch games in my opinion, but they are still really fun, so they do earn a spot in these honorable mentions. Same thing with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Maybe not top 5 worthy, but potential shot at a top 10 spot, and also a really fun game, albeit a bit glitchy sometimes. Then we have probably the game that I was most tempted at putting at the number 5 slot instead of Ultimate, and that is Super Mario Odyssey, because I mean, it is so good. Like, it really is. But for me, what did it is that I think Ultimate is the best Super Smash Bros. Game, like I said before. But Odyssey is not quite the best Super Mario game. It is close. It is very, very close. But I still prefer the 2 Super Mario Galaxy games over Super Mario Odyssey. And for that reason alone, it just barely missed out on the number 5 spot on this list. And this actually leads me into the last honorable mention, which is the All-Star Collection of the 3D Super Mario games. Those being Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. And once again, I was tempted to put this on the list, I really was. Especially because, I mean, Galaxy, again, is my favorite Super Mario game, and when you add to that Sunshine and 64, I mean, that's a pretty good game, you must admit. But the reason I didn't is that they're not really games for the Switch. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like Hades, where it came out on the Switch as well as other platforms. It was never a game, like, I mean, none of them were ever games that were made for the Switch, period, you know? They were made for different consoles that have now been implemented into the Switch, but they didn't release for the Switch at any point, so it just didn't feel right, if that makes sense. But if you have it on your list, that's totally fine. It's just that, to me, it didn't really make sense. But that is it for the honorable mentions, which means that we are finally here at the fabled #1 spot. What is the best game on the Switch as of May 2022? Well, some of you maybe could guess what this game is just based on what I've already gone over and what's left, especially if you were here at the beginning of my channel way back in October when I actually used the main theme from this game for one of my videos. However, a lot of you weren't around, and so since I don't really talk about stuff outside of Pokemon, this may come as a surprise to a decent number of you. But enough build-up, because the #1 game on the Switch, in my opinion, and honestly there's nothing that's really competing with it, is Fire Emblem Three Houses. Okay, this is actually a very hard entry for me to go over, because I can't really fully explain just how much I love this game. Seriously, I have played some incredible games, some of which I already went over in this list. But to me, no game has ever left me so incredibly satisfied and happy and just emotional also as this one. Again, it's hard to really describe, but for me, this is the only game that I have played to which I will give a full 10 out of 10 score. It is actually a perfect game for me. And I'm sure some of you are probably confused by this because maybe you've never played through this game, or if you have, maybe you prefer some other Fire Emblem games, and that's totally fine, but again, I've never had a game that I've enjoyed so completely from start to finish. I cannot even think of a single moment that I did not like in the game. And that is including some of the battles that felt really difficult to do on like maddening difficulty, for example. At least to do without losing anyone, because I'm not losing any characters on the way if I can help it. Also, yes, I play Fire Emblem with the classic mode on, because who plays with the mode where you can just have your units go down in battle but not die? Come on, guys, let's not do that, right? No, but seriously, even with those battles, I still loved it. Like, it just made me think harder about how to really organize my setup so that no one would die. And to me, that's a plus, if anything, because there aren't really that many games nowadays that come out that are difficult when they're single-player games. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they'll have a difficult mode here and there, but as a whole, games nowadays, I think we can all agree, are easier than they used to be. And this game, being able to kind of balance like pretty difficult combats without having them feel unfair, is kind of amazing. But what's even more amazing is that that's not even the reason why it's number one. No, the biggest reason why this is my favorite game of all time, and so of course also on the Switch, is that the characters and the story are just so incredibly well thought out, I guess, created, executed, however you want to say it. I enjoyed interacting with every single character, even the ones that I would just despise. I still enjoyed interacting with them. And the actual story is so incredibly cool. Like, I don't really know how to describe this, but it is a fantastic experience, especially your first time playing through it. And the fact that you can play through it multiple times with different routes, especially with one route that is completely different from the rest, because they give you an option to just have a completely different story, that is insane. Like, seriously, that is so good. Especially because I love character-driven storylines. I really do. Like, the stories where it's centered around a character's growth, right? I mean, great examples of this are Harry Potter, or Percy Jackson, or my all-time favorite book, Catcher in the Rye, which doesn't really have a plot outside of what is happening with Holden Caulfield. But if you really get interested in Holden, it is almost a life-changing book. Like, it is so incredibly well thought out, or I guess thought-provoking in this case would be the best way to describe it. Like, it's so interesting. And I mean, those stories are just the ones that speak to me the most, right? I love these stories where the characters are the main focus. But for them to work, the characters have to be, made well. Otherwise, it's like, okay, I don't really care about these people, so what's the point? Who cares? Yeah, oh, they're doing this, that. I don't care. But with this game, I think 90% of characters had something that would keep you interested and kind of make you want to learn more about them. Some of the standouts for me were definitely Claude and Edelgard in terms of the two of the main characters. Some of the standouts for me were definitely Claude and Edelgard, at least from the main character. Some of the standouts for me were definitely Claude and Edelgard, especially from the main characters cast. But also, someone like Raphael was very interesting to interact with. I think, honestly, most of Golden Deer was just great. Hilda maybe being my favorite character in all of Three Houses, except for Edelgard, who I do have as my number one character for Three Houses. But, so many fun characters. It's impossible to even talk about all of them, especially since I don't want to spoil anything about this game on the off chance that you have not played it, because spoiling the story is ruining at least 50% of the overall enjoyment for the game, which actually would still leave you with a really good game, but not the perfect game that I experienced. And again, maybe it won't be perfect for you, and that's totally fine. But even if it's not your usual game, maybe you're not about these Fire Emblem style games, or this very story-driven games, or tactical games, or whatever. Even if you don't like this, I still recommend checking it out at least once. You can always drop it if you really can't stand the gameplay or whatever, but there's a really good story there with some very fun characters just everywhere you look. And the gameplay is so polished that I have no problem saying it is by far the most fun game to play out of all of the Fire Emblem entries, in my opinion. And that is saying a lot, because I love the Fire Emblem series. Honestly, it probably would be my second favorite video game series in terms of just pure gameplay after Pokemon. So if I'm saying it's the best of this, trust me, that's saying quite a bit about how good this game is. Again, I could go on and on and on and on, but this video would turn into a 1 hour long video where like 90% of the time, it's just me talking about free houses. And I mean, if you want to have a video like that, I can do just a more in-depth analysis of this game and why I absolutely adore it. But for this particular video, I think it's good to just stop it here before we go into the never-ending story territory, or in this case, never-ending review territory, I guess. And that will do it for us here today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit different than the usual Pokemon ones that I generally put out, but I still think it was an interesting topic to discuss. Plus, it had some Pokemon in there, you know? I mean, many of the honorable mentions were Pokemon games, and we also had a Pokemon game crack the top 3, so it counts, right? Yeah, of course. No, but seriously, I do hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought of this list, and also what your top 5 Switch games are as of right now, and hopefully we'll be able to add Pokemon Scarlet and Violet to this list. And speaking of, I think we should be getting a new trailer for them pretty soon, as in within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm pretty excited for that, and if you want to find out when that is dropping, or you want to get my reaction for this, then do stay tuned, you know, because I'm gonna be covering that the minute it comes out. Anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And again, if you want to keep up with all of the Pokemon stuff, or you just want to have more videos from yours truly, then I do recommend subscribing. And I hope to see you all in the next video. But until then, remember to follow the way of the Ace. See ya!